evening and welcome to the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, February 27th, 2019. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Would you please call the roll?
Kerner.
Here.
Eliason. Evans.
Here.
Garner.
Here.
Herzog.
Here.
Olmsted.
Here.
Heschel.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight by 3 representatives from the Shapiro STEM Academy. We are joined this evening by Annabelle Schmitz, Laura Unger, and Elizabeth Clark. So I would invite them to come forward and lead us in the pledge. A little bit closer, ladies. That's very good. That's good. Perfect. That's perfect. Perfect. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pleasure to have Jacob Shapiro School represented here tonight. And we have certificates to thank the 3 ladies who led us in the pledge tonight. So Elizabeth Clark. You come forward, I'll give you your certificate. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate having you here tonight. There you are. Annabelle Schmitz. Thank you so much for coming. Nora Unger. Thanks for joining us this evening. The girls are welcome to stay. It's nice to have this kind of a crowd for the meeting. If you have other things you have to take care of tonight, we understand. So be sure and watch on cable access TV, and you can see yourselves and the children and grandchildren who led us tonight. So thank you for coming. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Moving on, we will go on to board and administrative reports. Board president report. I attended a workshop last week on legal aspects of education put on by the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. I had an opportunity to attend a variety of sessions and picked up some good information, which I'll be sharing with Dr. Cartwright to pass along as appropriate. I also want to thank all the youth who have participated, our students who have participated in many of our fall sports, which are our winter sports, perhaps is a better term, which are wrapping up. The wrestlers and the basketball team members and some of the other sports that are also taking place or have been taking place since probably last November, and they're now wrapping up as we turn to spring. Spring sports will be soon on the horizon. So thank you to all those students who represented our district so well and your schools so well, and the parents and other family members and community members who supported them. It really means a lot to those students. Thank you. Moving on to superintendent's report. Dr. Cartwright.
Good evening, everybody. I have quite a few good news to share with you this evening, and so we'll go ahead and get started right away. Jefferson Elementary students celebrated crossing guards during Crossing Guard Recognition Week. Hot beverages were delivered to their corner posts, and they were invited to a special luncheon at the school that included a fun gift basket as well as treats. Additionally, the school recently celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Second graders went to work on promoting peace in honor of Dr. King by having a peace march throughout the hallways of Jefferson. They also took a virtual field trip to places that were very important during his lifetime. OASD teachers participated in professional workshop on 3-dimensional learning and teaching in science. Teachers collaborated on ways to make students' thinking visible in the classroom with the use of tools such as quick writes, online technology, and posters. Our students have been engaging in an engineering design challenge based on the book The Wild Robot and are excited to participate by brainstorming, designing, and creating, as you can see right there, even in the robot on the top right picture. Carl Traeger Elementary School recently received a gold level recognition by the Safe Routes to Schools recognition program. The school was recognized for its efforts to promote safe walking and biking through the school's participation in Bike to School Month, International Walk to School Day, Winter Walk to School Month, Frequent Walker Biker Program, and the Walking School Bus. In fact, there was an article recently about the Walking School Bus. That's cool. The South Park Panthers teamed up with their pal, the Downtown Oshkosh Rotary, for a Super Bowl challenge. The groups challenged each other to see who could collect the most cans of soup. The Rotary collected 206 cans, and the students were able to collect a whopping 256 cans, all of which were donated to the Oshkosh Community Pantry. Additionally, the South Park Parent-Teacher Network recently hosted the annual Friday Night Frenzy. The evening of fun featured dancing, an open gym, board games, and the ever-popular photo booth. A fun-filled week was held at Roosevelt Elementary School. The school Students' Council sponsored Spirit Week, which is a wonderful way to show how much Roosevelt spirit students have. Lakeside Elementary physical education teacher Wendy Shalise shared her learning with the Lakeside community during a recent technology collaboration. She showcased Flippity, a website that uses Google Sheets to turn spreadsheets into timelines, quizzes, tournament brackets, and so much more. In her PE classroom, students used their Chromebooks during a bowling lesson. The students recorded their scores and then used the Flippity program to display the tournament bracket. On February 13th, Oshkosh North High School hosted the third annual Inclusive Valentine's Dance for middle and high school students with intellectual disabilities. The event allowed students with disabilities to dance and interact alongside their peers in a safe and supported setting. The dance also helps to guide members of the school community and beyond to a better understanding of students with unique learning needs. This month, Shapiro STEM Academy's school-wide focus has been on reviewing emotional competencies. Each classroom has been taking a few moments during morning meeting throughout the month to have a conversation about emotions and responding to emotions. On February 14th, Shapiro held a whole school friendship and kindness Minute to Win It celebration. Many schools had the opportunity to practice regulating their emotions in a fun, supportive setting. Nearly $11,000 was raised and will go directly to teachers and classroom mini grants, thanks to the generosity of the Oshkosh community. The 6th annual Trivia Night fundraiser, hosted by the Oshkosh Area School District Education Foundation, was an incredible success. Over 250 attendees participated in this year's event, coming together to give back and make a difference in the Oshkosh Area School District. Congratulations to 2 current and 1 former Oshkosh North High School student on being chosen to have their poetry published in the February print edition of Teen Ink magazine. Students from all over the world submit to this magazine, Teen Ink, so to be chosen is an incredible honor. Congratulations to the Oshkosh West High School mock trial team. The team recently took 2nd place in the regional tournament and will be competing at state in Madison in March. Additionally, the Oshkosh West O'Neill National Honor Society Polar Plunge jumpers recently raised $3,000 for the Special Olympics this year. Great job, Oshkosh West. Washington Elementary School teachers Lindsay Hermson and Mackenzie Wisnick recently presented at the School Leaders Advancing Technology and Education Conference in December. Their presentation, Fostering Student Engagement Across Content Areas, focused on how to place learning back into the hands of students by leveraging Chromebooks and other technology. 5 students from Oshkosh West High School were recently selected to represent Oshkosh West at Badger Boys and Badger Girls this summer. Additionally, Eddie Hansen, an Oshkosh North senior, recently qualified for the state swim meet and placed 22nd in the 100 breaststroke and 23rd in the 50 free. Eddie also set 2 school records this season and capped off a great senior season by being named the Co-FVA Swimmer of the Year. Congratulations to all of these student athletes. As we continue to spotlight a few of our teachers and sharing their reflections on why they teach, the individuals on the screen remind us of how caring our teachers are. We are eternally grateful for these individuals and for all of our teachers that work with our students on a daily basis. And here's just a sample for the past week of some of the activities that I've been involved with. As you know, I'm committed to building community through education and being present and engaged in our schools on an ongoing basis. And with that, I turn this back over to Dr. Herzog.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cartwright. It's been a busy couple of weeks. Are there any other district administrator supplemental reports tonight?
I have one.
Or are there other committee reports?
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
Mrs. Olmsted.
Sorry.
Too. You're good.
That
All
one.
right.
The Facility and Finance Committee had a meeting on February 21st, and I have the minutes. We had a budget variance report, a written report. Nobody in the committee had questions. Then we went to the agreement between the Oshkosh Area School District and the Winnebago County for the softball diamonds. The Oshkosh Area School District has had this agreement with Winnebago County since 1988. The agreement presented was for a new 5-year period through 2023. It was also noted that the utilities are paid only when the district uses the facilities. That's the only net that we pay. And the agreement will be coming to the board in March for consideration to vote on that. And then we had went over, Mrs. Schnorr had brought in the building level budgeting. A spreadsheet was distributed to committee members showing the 2018-19 budget expenditures by school and total per pupil expenditures by school. The federal government is requiring that districts budget on a building level. So in the past, all teachers' salaries and benefits were distributed to non-school locations. So 100 was teachers, 200 and 400, and they had them divided for the whole district out of one budget. Now the distribution for salaries and benefits is on each individual school number. Each school number goes to a certain site. If the staff works in multiple buildings, the cost is divided between those buildings. There are certain instances Thanks, that where the district account is used for psychologists and some of those that it would just be too difficult to split them up between 1 or 2 schools where they're at 5 or 6 schools. It was noted that in column H that of the spreadsheet is the true per pupil expenditure per school. The information contained on this spreadsheet will become public knowledge. It's undetermined when the DPI plans to release this information right now, though. There are some expenditures exclusions allowed but for the most, the spreadsheet shows everything being spent and the allocation to each site. A variance is going to be teacher salaries. Every building gets the same per pupil district allocation, and then in some schools, the grant funds are in addition to what the school district allocates to that school. And teachers' pay is going to be a big difference because if you have a school with higher teachers with more experience, then that salary is going to be higher in that school compared to the school that does not have that. And additional, any grants that are at a school but are not at a different school are going to be the biggest variances for the difference between the schools' allocations. The recreation department, the food service and debt have been excluded because it is really not a cost for educating students. Mrs. Schnorr and Ms. Handy decided because the DPI did not give many directions on how we can do this, so they decided not to add anything on there that wasn't affecting the education cost of the students. The next step will be including developing material to explain the budget, school expenditure allocation to parents, as well as the variances. The purpose for the new process is to help ensure equity for all students. It was noted to keep in mind that this is not comparing apples to apples across different districts. There was very little direction given by the federal government, which is I just said. So our district may choose not to add food services or not to add recreation department where another district might add their food services. So it's not going to be equal yet. At the end of the year, the spreadsheet will be updated using our actual expenditures. And again, when that information is released, we'll share it with the public too. The next meeting is scheduled for March 14th at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Olmsted. Any questions on that excellent report?
I have a question.
Maybe
two.
Special.
Softball diamonds
Yep.
at Winnebago County Park?
Yep.
Or is there any other location for softball diamonds in Winnebago County that are run by Winnebago County?
I don't know.
Or not?
Mm-mm.
But that's the only location
Yeah,
where
and they're
we-
using it for the rec department, uses them, yeah.
Okay, for the rec leagues?
Yeah, for the rec leagues, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're softball for the rec leagues.
Which are open to all ages, correct?
Yeah,
No?
yeah, no.
I don't
that
know.
was just-
We didn't talk about the
we didn't-
specifics.
yeah,
We
didn't
just
talk
talked about the agreement
Yeah,
altogether.
and the agreement is on, I read through it, and the agreement is on the information that was sent to us for the meeting. The whole agreement is on there.
In the
Okay.
board packet?
And we will get in the packet for the Facility and Finance Committee.
Mhm.
And it was for what I assumed was the adult leagues for softball.
Okay.
Because I know that a lot of the kids' leagues, softball for the kids is through the Y, and they use a lot of the schools.
In
Sure.
And a lot
parks,
of the
yeah, Stevens
parks.
Park, yeah.
Okay.
And they use a lot of the parks. So I don't quote me on this. We can definitely ask Mr. Wenig, but I think it's just for the adult leagues.
Okay.
If I may.
Unless you know, Dr. Cartwright.
This will be a point of, a topic coming up on a future agenda item,
Okay.
where there will be a staff report, where we'll be able to provide some of that additional information for you.
Okay.
In March, will come to us.
I think that was the only question that I had, so.
I know that there is some work being done, I think it's in Rainbow Park, on a new softball facility, under the
Sydney Supley?
leadership of one of our high school softball players.
Yeah.
And, obviously, you can't use it at this time of year, but I believe the plan is to have that ready in spring, summer.
If we have spring.
2019. And without any locks on it, so that it can be used at any time by anyone.
Good.
Any other comments or questions on facilities and finance report? If not, let's go on to non-agenda related public forum. Is there anyone who wanted to address the board this evening on a non-agenda related public forum item? Seeing none, we'll go on to agenda related. Is there anyone who wanted to address the board on an agenda related topic? Seeing none, we'll go on to our one and only workshop for this evening. You have received information in your board packet by way of a staff report on the Wisconsin State Education Conference. This is the annual joint convention which is held in January in Milwaukee with the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, the Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators, and the Wisconsin Association of School Business Officials. And there were 5 of us from the district who were privileged to attend this. That would be Mrs. Carlin and Mr. Evans and myself from the board, and then Dr. Cartwright and Dr. Gundlach. So, I believe Mrs. Schnorr was there also.
Yes, ma'am, and Jim Fox as well.
Okay. So, I thought perhaps we would start with Mrs. Carlin, because I
Sure.
know she was quite enthusiastic about her pre-conference
I was,
Yeah.
yes, I
session
was.
which she attended, so I think we should
Yes.
start with her.
So I had the opportunity to go to the poverty workshop, Breaking the Iron Cage of Poverty. And it was a 4-hour workshop, and it was led by Dr. Donna Beagle. She has done a documentary on PBS called Invisible Nation. And her story is so inspiring. Basically, she grew up in generational poverty and was married at the age of 15 and had kids by the age of 20, 2 or 3 kids, and then went back and got her doctorate and well, first her GED and then her doctorate, et cetera. And she said
she opened the session with, I want you guys to think about a question, and the question was, where do kids do homework if they don't have a home? And knowing that we have 200 homeless students in our district, it really makes you think, where do kids do homework if they don't have a home? And it's not a judgment on homework or whether or not we should have it or anything. It's just think about, these students and what they're struggling with. And she was talking about how poverty is essentially, when you're growing up in extreme poverty like she did, you're essentially living in a war zone. And every day is a struggle. And that, it's really hard for people that have not lived through poverty to understand poverty. So one of her key issues is that in order to tackle the issue of poverty and really help our students, we need to understand more about it and where they're struggling and where they come from. And some districts have even gone so far as to hire poverty coordinators who will work with these kids in their school districts. So she just gave us so much great information. And one example that I wanted to share with you all is that how she talked about how when you don't have a home and you're going from couch to couch, even getting to school and that every day can be a challenge. Maybe you don't have bus money, or for whatever reason you can't get to school on time, so you're tardy. So these students, when they come to our school and they're tardy, what do we do when they finally get there? We give them a tardy slip, and we scold them for being tardy.
Punishment.
Right, and and by law, we have to record these truancies and tardiness, et cetera. And she said, we cannot change the law, but we can change the experience. Instead of giving them a tardy slip and reprimanding them for being late, how about thank you for coming? We're glad you made it, or something like that. So she gave us a lot of ideas of things that we can do to help our students that are disadvantaged. Again, we can't change the law, but we can change the experience. And then she gave an example of a study that she had read about where mice were tracked through a maze, and they were shocked at certain levels, so they would learn to turn left and right and left and right. And she said, eventually the mice would figure it out. And she said, but then the study went on to say, well, what if you shock them at every turn, right? So if you think about students living in poverty, it's living in a war zone, and they're constantly getting shocked and setbacks. And so what happens if you shock the mice, no matter what they do, no matter where they move? And the study found that the mice would actually crawl into a fetal position and not move. And she said that's a lot of times what you can see a student in poverty who's consistently struggling. That's what we don't want them to do. We don't want them to curl up into the fetal position and stop trying and stop coming to school. So it was such a powerful workshop, and I could go on and on and on about it. She also talked about how 93% of the people that are receiving food stamps nowadays are working. So we have a working class poor. And I think, knowing that our district has 42% of our students on free and reduced lunch, I think that that's something we need to talk about more, because I don't think our community is necessarily aware that we have an issue and we have 200 homeless students. So continuing to educate our community on that is really important. Let's see, there's one other thing I wanted to say. Oh, she also had some really disturbing stats that made you think about the importance of this issue. One, that only 11% of students in poverty will graduate from college. I found that really shocking. And that 80% of incarcerated people can't read beyond the 8th grade, and 50% have mental health challenges. So, moving forward, it's about education, it's about awareness, and there was one other thing. She talked about a place in Utah where the school board
It's
and
the last page, I just saw it.
You did?
Oh, next page.
Okay.
Oh, okay. It says Utah.
Yep, okay, thank you. So it said that in Utah, the school board actually partnered with the city to get some land and reduce homelessness by 80% in 1 year simply by building homeless houses. They partnered, I know that that's kind of a stretch out there, but they actually partnered and with the city, built houses and just paid for it because they wrapped in the cost of what it costs to put a child through child services, and it ended up being more economical for them to build housing. So it was just so inspiring, and I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining all of
You're doing a
it,
great job.
but you know, it's
Very
just,
good.
it was just very eye-opening. So I was grateful to have the opportunity to hear her speak. And again, if you want to look her up online, she is working on Invisible Nation.
What's her name again?
Dr. Donna Beagle, Beeegle.
Thank you. Oh, I thought you did a great job. Thank you.
So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to attend. I look forward to next year as well.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Carlin. Any questions or comments to share with Mrs. Carlin?
This might be just an over general question, but is there going to be is our board going to do anything as a result of having gone to the conference?
That's an excellent question. I think we could keep that in mind as we hear
Yeah.
from the other presenters.
Okay.
I would like to, yeah.
We know that the number of students in poverty in this district has been rising over time.
Yes.
And at the Southwest Rotary meeting only today, there was conversation led by one of our staff members, Nicole Peterson, on the topic of poverty. The Southwest Rotary has paired with Chancellor Levitt from the university and some other entity. They have put together some bags to take to North High to help address food insecurity. And Nicole reported that last week, instead of food, they were advised to take bus passes to hand out. So they did, but they had students who the week before knew that there was food, and so they came for the food.
Oh, shoot.
So there's been a need that's certainly been identified there. And Mrs. Dumke has helped institute Spiffy Spartans at North, and I forget what the Merrill program is called, to assist students who need clean clothes and food and soap and toothpaste and those kinds of things. So there are some efforts out there, but I think we need to do
More.
more.
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly sure what that is, but knowing that we have this issue and that our students, we have a certain percentage of our students who deal with this every day, namely 4,000 who are on free and reduced lunch. It's one thing to talk about the problem, and that's important from an awareness standpoint, but then what do you do about it?
Right.
Right,
It's not enough just to say we have a problem.
Okay.
So
yep.
we could work this probably into our board goals, which we'll be discussing next month when we do our board annual self-evaluation.
Okay.
And certainly when we get the results of the strategic planning and the input from those who responded online or who attended the focus groups may help us define what we do with that.
Mhm.
All right, how about Mr. Evans? Mr. Evans, you've been representing this board at the state convention, what we refer to as the state convention, for several years, serving as a delegate to the annual Delegate Assembly, and attending sessions as well, so
That is true.
what would you like to share?
Well, the Delegate Assembly took up most of my Wednesday, so that would be probably what I'll be talking on most. All the resolutions that we discussed at that meeting a month or two ago passed. There was some that, one in particular that had an amazing amount of amendments that were voted for and then voted down, and it was on school safety, of all things. People really had problems with the wording of it and everything else, but finally it passed, I think, pretty much intact. Most of them were passed overwhelmingly. I think the closest one was Higher Learning Commission. That's where they were going to get accrediting agencies to relax their credential requirements for high school staff who teach dual courses. That was 153 to 120, so that was probably about the closest one. And some of them, because they have 3 different ways of voting. You can raise a paddle, you can use electronic device, or you can do a voice vote. And for some reason, I don't know, you like to use those paddles a lot. And when they do that, it's you can see it pass, but you don't get an accurate count of the votes like they do when they do the electronic device. So on some of these, I just have that it passed, but I don't know what the vote lineup was. Other than that, my computer went down, it went off. Hold on. The other things that I enjoyed quite a bit, which for some reason, first year I went, I never went to them, but the general sessions. And then the breakfast for WASB had Tricia.
Tasha.
Yeah, Tasha Shu. And that was a interesting one. She, in high school, had, as she said, near perfect pitch. And she was auditioning for The Wizard of Oz. And as she was getting ready to audition, she fell through a trapdoor 16 feet down and hit the cement basement. Paralyzed her. And now she's a motivational speaker. And 2 things that she mentioned that stuck out with me is because she can move her head and she can move her shoulders. Hands are pretty much paralyzed and everything else is paralyzed, but she can move her thumb a little bit. And because she can do that, she can put on a apparatus that lets her pick up things and grab things. And she says, I'm so well at it that I can apply eyeliner. She said, you women would know about that. And I guess it's kind of difficult to do. And then she, at the end, she had to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And of course, that brought down the whole ballroom, was dabbing her eyes and that. And then Sloan Thomas L. was the closing general session. And he was he got up there first, and I think the first about half hour he was just talking. He wasn't really into his speech yet. And he said, because that's the one that Tony Evers spoke at, and he said, I got to admire you guys. You guys here are smart. You had a governor that wasn't doing what you wanted to do, and you put a teacher in that seat.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Hired one of their own, yeah.
Then he also he said that he started a chess club. And he said, why a chess club? Because chess club for students of disadvantage. And he said, because when you see somebody carrying a chess, you think they're smart. And he had one kid, his students chess club students actually get ranked. And he had one student that was playing a grandmaster, and he was losing. And then all of a sudden he started winning, and he beat the grandmaster. And he went up and he asked him, what'd you do? How did you do that? He said that, he had gotten thrown out of his apartment, his family had, and they wouldn't let him go in and get his clothes. So teachers went and bought him some clothes so he can go on the trip. He said, I just thought of those teachers. I just didn't want to let them down. The organizers of the tournament came up to him and said, we had several grandmasters watching those moves. He was thinking beyond all of us. We don't know how he did that. That's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Sounds like it's also a rewarding experience for you. Why don't we move on to Dr. Gunlock? Since
Okay.
he's also eager to share.
Yeah. One of the first ones I went to was about developing community connections, and what really struck me about that particular presentation is how much it paralleled what we do here in Oshkosh, especially in our efforts of making sure students are college, career, and community ready. And what really struck me was then last Monday, several of us went to Oshkosh Corp, and we saw a living example of that program in action. And it just really reaffirmed that what we're doing in Oshkosh, we really are doing a lot of the similar things, and in some cases, we're even well ahead of the curve of other districts that are going down that path. So just, kudos to Julie Conrad and Nicole Peterson and that group that do just such a wonderful job. So that was really cool to see. One of my favorites was the keynoter when Steve Pemberton spoke. He was just outstanding, and he delivered a message that really was in line with several of the ones that not only that Steph Carlin and Jim Evans talked about, but he was someone who was in a foster home. It was a very abusive foster home, and he had basically pretty much zero chance of being successful. And the interesting thing about him, the thing that struck me so much, was his idea of there really is a real life butterfly effect. And I think especially those of us in education, and probably a lot of people who even aren't in education, part of the reason that we're in education is because, as he puts it, a child never forgets who sees them first. And in a lot of cases, many of us became teachers because another teacher saw us first. And that message just really resonated with me, and I've had a lot of conversations with teachers, and every time I ask them, why did you go into teaching? Another teacher saw them first, usually in the subject area they chose to go into. So that was really, that was a really moving presentation, and it really reaffirms that I think sometimes our teachers need that. They need to realize that sometimes just smiling at a student, because there was this one teacher that would smile at him, that was the first one to see him, and eventually turned his life around. And it was just, there were several stories like that, and I'm nowhere near doing it justice, but he was outstanding. And the other one, part of the reason that I went down there is I was joined by Matt Callahan and Kathleen Stefani, and we actually presented at the conference. So spent a lot of time talking with people about AI, robotics, algorithms, and what are we doing as a school system. As you saw in the superintendent's good news report, Mackenzie Wissink and Lindsay Hermson presented at Slate. And a big portion of what they presented was how are some of the things that they're doing in a real live environment with free and reduced and every other type of student that we have, how are they blending that into their learning activities, and how are they doing that? And we actually use them as part of the example in our presentation. So we start out talking about AI, and this board has actually seen a portion of that presentation. You saw version 1.0. This was like version 4.0 of that presentation, and how things are moving so quickly and so exponentially forward. So what do we do as a school system to make sure our students are prepared when they get there? Because it's moving so fast right now, and even since we presented to this board, so many things have changed during that time. So we always end that presentation with specific examples of what our teachers are doing. So that was another big portion of it. And we spent a lot of time after the presentation talking with other school districts as well. So that was what I experienced.
Again, a worthwhile experience. Any comments or questions to share with Dr. Benlock?
Well, I would just like to add that I agree with what he said about the theme being about one person making a difference, because I felt that as well. In almost every presentation, there was a consistent theme of, one person believed in them, one teacher encouraged them, and in some cases it was maybe even just a bus driver. And so that really hit home to me, what kind of impact it just takes one person. It really does, so.
Important learning. Dr. Cartwright, what would you like to share tonight?
Certainly, and Ms. Norris' absence tonight, she actually gave me a quick highlight in order to share with the board. So I'll start with her highlight for you. She really focused on breakout sessions that dealt specifically with effective communication and really how to communicate with employees on some complex issues such as compensation and benefits. Looking at a regional model for comparing compensation and benefits as well as successful wellness programs. And so she found that the successful wellness session was actually very interesting because she saw that as a district, Oshkosh is actually kind of ahead of the bar on a lot of these things, and was also able to take a look at what type of resources are available through the different region CSAs. And found that with CSA 6, currently has a model for comparing compensation, but it's a tool that's continuing to be refined at this point in time, because it doesn't necessarily encompass all the benefits that we pay for with each of our employees. And so she said, this was really kind of interesting for her, and she found that it was an effective tool, but how do I leverage that and going forward? She was also a presenter at one of the sessions on the impact of vouchers and charters in Wisconsin's public schools, where she was able to present and learn with her fellow colleagues about what are some of the effects that are occurring right now whenever we're having these voucher programs that are going into place. And so she looked at that from the state level as well as with the local level. So I found that very interesting. And she also, of course, had the opportunity to network with many of her counterparts from several other districts, which is very instrumental in sharing information, because oftentimes when you have those face-to-face opportunities is when you can ask some of those timely questions and you can get a timely response. So there's a lot of power to that as well. And of course, we can't fall short, of course, of the exhibit hall. So, because within the exhibit hall, there are multiple companies that are there, and a lot of them share with you what are potential resources that could potentially be available to the district in the future. And so if you're kind of looking for something, so for example, with our wellness program, she was kind of looking around, saying, okay, what are some ideas that maybe I can take away, even from the exhibitors, that we can implement back into our school district? She was able to lift some of that information as well in order to take back here. So that was Ms. Schnoor.
Very good.
With myself, I also I had opportunities. Actually, on a few of my sessions, I had some of my fellow, well, I should say, some of my school board members with me attending that. I was very honored to see them and to be a part of the conversations, because the themes that I was attending really was related to strategic planning with equity-based. How do you do equity-based strategic planning? And so it's really ensuring, when you say all means all, is that means that you had to purposefully put your eyes through the lens of the various components that are built within equity. So when you are designing out your strategic goals, what does that really mean, and how do you quantify that, and how do you measure that? So there were some conversations related to that. Also talking about, closing the achievement or opportunity gaps, which was really important, because as we know right now, we're living in a time to which it's exponential. In other words, the amount of learning that is occurring right now over the next 12 years is more than almost everything combined together within history. So that's pretty exponential. So how do you leverage some of those resources? How do you leverage the board governance, leadership, achievement, and what are those high-yield strategies that you need to be implementing in order to have high quality and keeping up with the amount of change that's occurring so quickly? And, really understanding the urgency of preparing, again, every child, all means all. And so there was it was a good, rich session talking about that. And then, of course, once you have a strategic plan, how do you monitor it? How do you align it? How do you ensure those kind of things? And so this one was more of an affirmation for me. This is an area for which I'm accustomed to doing is, once you have a strategic plan, that becomes your scope of work for everybody. Because that is something that the board, you set the goals, you set the priorities for us, we get into and then we take it for you and work on those weeds, and then it's onus on us to report that information out to you. But then, as schools are working on their school improvement plans, that is aligned to the district strategic plan. As we're going forward and we have, this looks really interesting, well, how does that fit into our strategic plan? And if it doesn't fit, then should we adjust? So it gives those opportunities and those conversations. It goes back to the power of communication and ensuring that there's two-way communication going on an ongoing basis. And then one is tied to a session that Dr. Herzog and I attended as well, which was goal monitoring and accountability plan. So that kind of goes hand in hand with that. Overwhelmingly, the theme that I saw from our presenters is definite for the three presenters in general session is relationships. It's the power of relationships, and it goes exactly to what Dr. Gunluck was just talking about, and as Carlin was talking about, is that you have to have a relationship with students in order to actively and continue to keep them engaged in their own learning. And without that sense of relationship and understanding, then how can you possibly have a high level of expectation for them, because you don't know what they're coming to the table with. And this really hits home, especially for the work that we are doing currently as a district around the area of equity, is really having an understanding of what are the assets that students have and what are the lenses that they're coming to school with and working with their teachers within their own educational pathway. So those were my takeaways from that, and with that, I'll turn this back over to Dr. Herzog.
Well, thank you. I serve on the Wisconsin Association of School Board of Directors, and as such, they keep us busy as representatives of that group for much of Wednesday. So I was able to attend a pre-conference session with Dr. Cartwright on goal monitoring and accountability plans. One of the things that I heard in that session dealt with SMART goals, and then on Friday morning I attended a session called Systematic Alignment Brings Clarity and Equity to School Improvement.
Riveting.
A riveting title. But the session actually was quite good. It was led by a couple of administrators from the DeForest School District, where they're using a system-wide approach for collaborative, data-driven improvement at all levels of the district, from the boardroom to the classrooms. And we heard that in the session on the goal monitoring as well. DeForest is focusing on improving learning for all students, with all meaning all, which was, again, a theme that we heard there. And they use a consistent and aligned improvement process using a consultant on smart learning systems. Ann Konzemius is from Winneconne, I believe, and she's worked in our district in the past. But her focus is on outcomes, not outputs as such, but what are the results of the learning. One of the analogies that one of the DeForest people used was aligning your goals from, I don't know if I like that top-down analogy, but the boardroom to the classroom. And in other words, the whole institution, the whole system is aligned. And they compared it to rowing a boat. And if you're pulling the oars together in the same direction, that's a good thing. And one of the things I found I was doing in this conference, and then the one I attended last week, was making connections. And so I went up to these gentlemen afterward, and I said, I understand the analogy of the rowboat and the oars going in the same direction, but I said some years ago, the university and the YMCA and another group sponsored dragon boat races. And I don't remember how many sit in a boat. It must be 10?
I think so, yeah.
With a drummer.
10 to 12.
And I participated in that. I wouldn't claim to be the best rower in the group. But you can tell when those oars are hitting the water at the same time and with such precision, it feels like the whole boat lifts out of the water. And there's less, it feels like there's less resistance. It's one of the most challenging 30 seconds I've spent in a long time, but it's exhilarating. Or if you have everybody pulling, but they're pulling in different paces and directions. Yes, you're all going the same way, but with more resistance and more challenge. So the idea is to make that a smoother and more rewarding experience. So anyway, I thought that was important. I also attended the Steve Pemberton session. That was a story to me of resilience, determination, and vision. One of the things that drove him to want to go on to higher education was to get out of that house where he was living, literally in the basement, on very limited food, And if he felt if he could go to college, he would be able to live somewhere else. So that was his motivation. I did buy his book. I read the whole book. I've loaned it to a teacher in the district. It's just to me, a very powerful story of relationships and the power of one or two individuals having a positive influence on someone else's life at a time when they really need that. I also attended the session with Tasha Shu, the lady in the wheelchair, which to me was a story of overcoming challenges and perseverance. I've just started her book, her second book, and she was challenged by a former boyfriend to do more for herself, and so she started doing more for herself. And she drives a car by herself, for goodness sakes. And just a fascinating story.
Inspiring.
But again, relationships is very important. The session one of the sessions I attended last week on legal issues had to do with trauma-informed care, and the Waupaca superintendent spoke about relationships, among other things, and talked about how his recommendation to teachers for the first 3 days of the school year was not to talk about school rules, or tardy slips and so on, but to build relationships with students. And that would be the foundation then on which you can build for success going on from there. The Steve Pemberton story I found to be very touching, and the notion that someone seemed to have so many hurdles that they had to overcome. And then I read a sports story in today's Northwestern about a young man from the University of Wisconsin who's a defensive back and plans to go out for the NFL, and how he competed with rats and other critters for food. And the mother had some health issues, some mental health issues, some drug-related issues, and all those stories, Tasha's and Steve's and this young football player from Madison, spoke to me very loudly about relationships and knowing people and looking for signs. I kept thinking as I was reading the Steve Pemberton book about there were signs there, and although he did his best to try to cover those up and keep those private, but if we just knew a little bit more about people, maybe we'd be a little bit kinder and gentler.
Great.
Which related to another keynoter, Dr. Michelle Borba, who spoke about strengthening student empathy and resilience and on creating safe and compassionate school cultures. Dr. Cartwright shared with us tonight the one school that had a session on, was it kindness? I can't remember what the title of that was. It was Jacob Shapiro's school, but I don't remember but it struck me that, again, that was making connections, making relationships, and understanding what other people are going through. I also attended the Delegate Assembly, as did Mr. Evans, and that was very interesting. Parliamentary procedure was alive and well. And in parliamentary procedure, if there's debate going on and someone wants to end debate, they simply ask to call the question. And that happened a lot this year, with people still waiting in line to speak, and so that was cut off, and that was the end of that. So it was a very interesting case study of parliamentary procedure in action. Finally, I attended the Blue Ribbon Commission Where Do We Go From Here report by several of those representatives. I'm very optimistic that there will be bills introduced in the 2019-2021 legislature in the state budget to deal with some of the issues in there. And we had a chance at, I believe it was our last board meeting, to go through every one of those recommendations and be in a position to share those out. I don't think this is going to be a report that sits on a shelf.
Good.
I do think there will be legislation introduced. Where it goes from there, we don't know at this point, but I do think there will be some legislative action taken. Finally, I was also a presenter along with Dr. Michael Beath from the ACT program at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. Dr. Beath works with individuals who have at least a bachelor's degree and wish to become teachers. and also with Mrs. Nancy Yeager from CISA 6. She is with the RIGHT program, which stands for Residence and Teacher Education. That is also a teacher preparation program for individuals with at least a bachelor's degree who wish to go into shortage areas. And my contribution related to the Center for Additional Teaching Licenses at UW Oshkosh, where I work with teachers who have, by definition, at least one teaching license and wish to acquire more. And so that was my convention experience. The thing that really struck me was the relationships and thinking about what I could do as a board member to help build relationships. Not that I need to build the relationships myself, but how can I encourage that in staff to help our students be successful? And then aligning the strategic plan so that the board is aligned, the central office, the principals, the teachers, all aspects of the organization. So we have those oars rowing, just like in the dragon boat, so we can lift that boat out of the water and really make some progress. So, any questions or comments? All right. Mrs. Garner had asked a question, okay, so where do we go from here with this? Perhaps we need a future agenda item related to poverty.
That and yes.
Could we define that a little bit?
Yes.
I like it vague.
Perhaps with Mrs. Carlin's help, since she was the one who attended that session, we could fine tune that a little bit.
Sure.
And perhaps looping in someone like Mrs. Dumke, who encounters that. She had shared with me about a year ago, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, single-spaced in between and single-spaced within double-spaced between comments of students in our district who experience poverty on a daily basis, in many cases experience food insecurities, and how they struggle to get enough to eat, not only for themselves, but they're looking out for other siblings, other members of the family. And there are agencies and there are groups in the community. Maybe we need to reach out to those groups and do some collaboration, but we could also look at what we can do internally. Food insecurity certainly is a part of that, but there are other aspects of that as well.
Well, as luck would have it, I am actually meeting with Julie Dumke tomorrow because I had asked if I could share with her some of the learnings that I got from this workshop, and she graciously is giving me 45 minutes tomorrow. So maybe that's something we could talk about too, about how we can move forward and do something to help.
And may I make a recommendation?
Of course, yes.
So, as you know, I've been talking about some of the work that we are doing related to equity and some of the training that we're doing right now with our administrators. Could we potentially do a shortened version of a workshop with the board related on for the focus areas that talks about poverty a little bit for that work? And go ahead and just workshop the board with that a little bit. And so that you can see some of the conversations that are happening amongst the staff members right now.
Okay. Yeah. One thing that she had us do during our workshop was talk about all our stereotypes that we have. She asked us, give us some stereotypes of when you think of poverty, what do you think of? And it was so uncomfortable because, you don't want to admit the stereotypes that you have, and most of them are false. It's not even the reality or even close to the reality. But she knew it was an uncomfortable discussion, and she said in order to have, change and implement change, you have to have these uncomfortable discussions. You have to address it head on. So I would welcome the opportunity to dive deeper into that.
I think that could get us into the current strategic plan related to equity. I mean, that's not really how that's defined in that report, but looking at the 30,000-foot view of the term equity, I think that as it relates to students taking CAP courses, AP courses, participating in sports and other activities, could expand that conversation. And it may not be just a one time only, I think.
Right.
That's a very, very big topic and lots of implications. We're going
Yes.
to solve that or address that in one meeting, but
We have to start
we
somewhere.
can do
yeah.
something. Do
Right.
something.
It's awesome.
Any other comments or suggestions? All right then. Thank you all for your participation in representing the district so well and in your sharing tonight.
Yes, thank you
We
guys.
appreciate that. All right, then we will move on to the consent resolution agenda. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. Is there anyone who wanted to pull anything from the consent agenda this evening? All right then. The board will consider approval of 1, minutes of the January 29th, 2019 special board meeting. Number 2, minutes of the January 29th, 2019 executive session special board meeting. Number 3, minutes of February 8th, 2019 special board meeting. Number 4, minutes of February 13th, 2019 regular board meeting. Number 5, minutes of February 13th, 2019 executive session regular board meeting. Number 6, minutes of February 18th, 2019 special board meeting. Number 7, bills payable. Number 8, personnel. A, appointments, temporary appointment, resignations, and salaries. Number 9, Neola policy updates. A, 4440 job-related expenses. B, 5111 eligibility of residents/non-resident students. C, 5200 attendance. D, 5512 use of tobacco, nicotine, and related products by students. E, 5516 student hazing. F, 5540 law enforcement investigative interviews of students. G, 5630 corporal punishment. H, 5772 weapons. I, 7217 weapons. J, 5870 student production of goods and services. K, 6520 payroll deductions. L, 6700 Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA. M, 6830 audit. N, 7440 facility security. O, 8146 notification of educational options. P, 8310 public records. Q, 8405 environmental health and safety program. R, 8462 mandatory reporting of student abuse and neglect and threats of violence. S, 8500 food services. T, 9130 public requests, suggestions, or complaints. U, 9160 public attendance at school events. And number 10, policy 0176 board self-evaluation policy update.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ketchum.
Aye.
Ketchum, aye. Carlin.
Aye.
Carlin, aye. Eliason. Evans.
Aye.
Evans, aye. Garner.
Aye.
Garner, aye. Herzog.
Aye.
Herzog, aye. Olmsted.
Aye.
Olmsted, aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Are there any individually considered resolutions for tonight? Are there any requests for future agenda items?
Okay, I did that already.
One other one I would like to add, and it's kind of a reminder, we've been trying to schedule a time to meet with a consultant to lead us through the key work of school boards, and we put out possible dates for the months of February and March, and none of those had worked. So we will be putting out some dates for April and hoping that we can find at least one date, maybe two, to complete that work, or complete that phase of that work with the consultant in the month of April. So please take a good look at your calendar and see if there's any possibility that any of those dates will work. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Any announcements?
Yeah, I just want to announce that March is Youth Art Month, and on this Saturday, there'll be several different places that are going to have youth art up, including Art Space Collective.
Cool.
Number 7 Merritt Street.
Very good, thank you. What are the hours of that, Mr. Evans?
That is from 6 to 9.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
Dr. Herzog?
Yes.
May I give an announcement if I may, please?
Absolutely.
Just at the last board meeting, I had provided information stating that related to the inclement weather days, and as stated that we were working towards hopefully getting some language possibly in front of legislators related to that for some relief. So I just wanted to highlight to you that there has been co-sponsored language at this point in time that is out with a March deadline coming up here rather within the next couple weeks.
Cool.
The language is very happy to see language, so I don't want to take away from that. We do have 3 questions related to the bill and how the language is currently written, and so I just wanted to highlight that to the board so that you're aware of what those questions were. Because as it's written right now, it's very loose language, and so it's unclear as to whether or not this is a 1-year provision or if this is a provision that may be given over multiple years. And specifically in giving relief to the minimum number of required instructional minutes. So that was the first question. And the second question also is there a defined number or defined range of number of days so that the intent of the legislators would be carried out and how the bill would, if it were to go through, would be interpreted, rather than just saying it's up to each district administrator or superintendent. So looking just for some little bit of consistency related to that. And then the third one, while candidly for Oshkosh area school districts, we would qualify under the language that it is, how it is phrased right now. However, it is concerning. So I just want to make sure that I put that out there as well, because when we say all means all, we do take that from a lens of equity as well. The language of the bill currently states that only districts who have the district rating of significantly exceeds expectations or exceeds expectations can take advantage of the language. So that means that if you are meeting expectations or anything below that, unfortunately, you would not get any relief. And as you know, this weather phenomenon has impacted the entire state.
Right.
And we also know from Ms. Conrad's presentations that she's provided to us previously, even looking at districts across the entire state, there is a significantly high correlation or relationship between the percent of students who are on free and reduced lunch or economically disadvantaged and the overall rating of school districts. So I say that, again, for Oshkosh area school districts, for this current year, we did very well, and we would meet the language. However, depending upon the answers for the first 2 questions, right? And potential future implications. So things just to take into consideration, because we do know that a lot of the measures are a moving target, and it is annually calculated, and it is based upon the performance of students across the entire state. So it's just being mindful of that, because we have been talking a lot about equity and those kind of things. So it was something of concern as to whether or not that would be equitable across the entire state. I know we're concerned about Oshkosh area school district, but of course we always want to take a look at the fairness of any language that's put out for all school districts across the state. So with that, Dr. Herzog.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cartwright, and thank you for your work on that topic. As many have noted, this has been a most unusual winter. I learned before coming to this meeting tonight that according to one of the meteorologists in Green Bay, this has been the 2nd snowiest February on record.
Wow.
We got one more day yet.
We have one more day. We're just 2 inches behind at 27.2, I believe was the number. And we've seen minus 50-degree temperatures. We've seen ice storms. We've seen just about everything in this month of February. So hopefully March will turn out better. We'll find out. With that, we would entertain a motion to go into executive session considering the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility under Wisconsin Statute 19.85, parent 1, parent C, letter A, preliminary notice of non-renewals for temporary contracts. Excuse me.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
We have harmony tonight here. Okay, please call the roll.
Ellen? Aye. Aye, Eliason. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye, Garner.
Aye.
Garner, aye, Herzl.
Aye.
Herzl, aye, Olmstead.
Aye.
Aye, Peschel.
Aye.
Peschel, aye, motion carried.
Thank you very much, and with that, we are adjourned.